we happy this morning?
Apakah Anda berbahagia pagi ini?
Are we happy this morning?
Apakah Anda berbahagia pagi ini?
If you are, let me hear you say amen.
Kalau memang berbahagia, katakan amin.
If you are, let me see you wave your hand.
Atau kalau berbahagia, lambaikan tangan.
If you are, stand up.
Kalau tidak, kalau berbahagia, berdirilah.
And turn to someone next to you and say,
Biarkan durian hanya sama dia.
that has never happened before for me.
Belum pernah seperti itu.
But I'm also happy for the hospitality and the fellowship I've experienced in these meetings.
Dan saya juga bergembira atas keramah tamahan daripada orang-orang dalam pertemuan ini.
I think you're very warm and you're very friendly. And
Kalian
each other
sangat
is moving.
hangat dan bersahabat dalam pertemuan ini.
So I felt right at home.
Jadi saya akan ceritakan ini di rumah.
Yes, I did. And by the way, I just want you to know I have a Filipino barong on and I have an Indonesian shawl.
Dan juga saya punya barang dari Filipina dan ini selendang Indonesia.
So I
But
I want to give thanks to your president of the division and the treasurer and cheers the leadership summit and the program, and partner Wanza and myself worked with him in that position.
Ya, Pendeta Mike Ryan mengadakan program kepemimpinan summit dan kami bertiga sama-sama melakukan ini.
And as Mike said yesterday, the program that this division has is in fact a model that we are proud of.
Jadi Pendeta Mike katakan program yang ada ini akan menjadi satu pola untuk kepemimpinan yang akan
So
dibuat.
thank you, Sam, and thank you for the officers and all those who support this program.
Jadi terima kasih buat para pemimpin divisi yang sudah mendukung program kepemimpinan
And thank
ini.
you for the union presidents and for the executive officers and all the departmental leaders who make such a big
Dan
difference.
juga kepada para pemimpin kedua uni, terima kasih untuk semua ini pendukungannya.
And I also want to give you greetings from our world president, Pastor Ted Wilson.
Dan saya mau menyampaikan pesan khusus selamat dari Pendeta Ted Wilson, Ketua GC kita.
He asked us to give his greetings when we go from place to place, and I wanted to be sure to do that.
Dan dia telah memesan pada saya agar memberikan sambutan ini di tempat kemana saja saya berkunjung.
He has a deep love and leadership and spiritual leadership,
Dia memiliki kasih yang sangat dalam, memiliki kerohanian dalam memimpin,
and so he gives this program full support.
dan melalui program ini dia sangat dukung.
I want to thank my translator yesterday, Pastor Mandeling,
Terima kasih buat penerjemah saya kemarin, Pendeta Mandola,
and also today, Pastor Samuel.
dan sekarang Pendeta Samuel.
Yeah, for assisting me with this right here. I hope I can work with it real slowly. If I'm going too fast, you'll let me know.
Oke, kalau cepat kasih tahu saya.
But I wanted to say that I guess in particular that I noticed in the meetings a strong sense of esprit de corps. I mean, a good spirit, good fellowship, good interaction one with the other.
Dan melalui pengalaman ini saya mendapatkan pengalaman yang berbagai hal, apakah itu kerohanian, keramah tamahan, dan lain sebagainya.
And that's a good thing.
Dan itu adalah hal yang baik.
That shows that you have a genuine liking for each other.
Itu menunjukkan kita memiliki,
Evangelism section.
itu adalah pengalaman kemarin di mana ada kesaksian-kesaksian program integrated
I mean, I
evangelism
saw you having
lifestyle.
fun with evangelism.
Saya lihat ini semua peserta sangat senang dalam menginjil.
I mean, you weren't just simply talking about it, you were involved in it. I wanted to see the union presidents standing up here making the reports.
Saya melihat bagaimana itu ketua uni begitu semangat dalam membuat laporannya.
I thought to myself, I said, if I wasn't a Seventh Adventist, I joined the church yesterday.
Saya pikir ini harus saya sampaikan karena kemarin saya sudah lihat pengalaman ini. Kalau saya bukan orang Advent, saya bisa bertobat kemarin.
But also, I think it was a very unique session, a very unique aspect of it, that they had the two ladies up here in front.
Dan ada sesi yang sangat unik di mana kemarin dilakukan.
I mean, that was very special.
Itu sangat istimewa.
Sister Golfan, Sister Andrus.
Ada dari Andrews, Ibu,
Did I get it?
presentasi daripada Ibu.
Yeah, I thought it was very interactive, and it shows, I mean, a really good synergy and energy there, so I just thought that was a
Dan caranya mempresentasikan itu sangat interaktif.
So I want to thank you for your hospitality.
Jadi terima kasih untuk keramah tamahan.
One last thing I must thank you for,
Dan satu hal lagi yang saya mau ucapkan terima kasih.
and that is for the great support you gave to the Great Controversy Project.
Dan terhadap dukungan Anda yang luar biasa proyek kemenangan akhir.
This is the first time I've had occasion to express appreciation to this area.
Ini kali pertama saya mendapatkan kesempatan untuk membicarakan di daerah ini tentang kemenangan akhir
You
proyek.
gave great support, and we thank you for that.
kedua uni sangat mendukung akan program ini. Terima kasih.
Ted Wilson had a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. I don't know how you can say that.
Pendeta Ted Wilson sangat senang dia mengatakan.
No, but he really had a bold, heavenly, anointed goal.
Dan saya percaya bahwa Pendeta Ted Wilson itu mendapat pengurapan dari surga untuk membuat program kemenangan.
And that was to have 50,000 copies of the Great Controversy and the Great Hope around the world.
Bayangkan itu buku kemenangan lahir disalurkan dan buku pengharapan 50.000.
Then he expanded that to 100 million.
Dan akhirnya dia berbesar menjadi 100 juta.
It was 50 million, 100 million, and we in fact reached more than 142 million copies around the
Dan
world.
akhirnya menjadi 140 juta eksemplar disebarkan di seluruh dunia.
Amen.
Amin.
Amen again.
Amin.
When we think about the fact that that many books are around the world and all of those are seeds of the gospel, we can expect a harvest down the line.
Kalau kita pikirkan bagaimana itu buku yang luar biasa menjadi benih kebenaran yang sudah kita sebarkan sebagai benih Injil di seluruh dunia.
And so I think evangelism, the years to come, will be reaping the benefits from the work you've done with the Great Controversy
Jadi
Project.
saya pikir penuaian dari program penginjilan akan terjadi luar biasa oleh karena telah disebarkan buku kemenangan akhir ini.
At the end of the session, I hope you go home charged up, energized, and full of the Holy Ghost.
Dan saya berharap dengan berakhirnya acara ini kita betul-betul sudah di-charge ulang kembali dan semangat oleh Roh Kudus bekerja di tempat masing-masing.
Yeah, Kevin, and also thank you for your kind hospitality in Malaysia. He was the representative from the division with us in
Dan
Malaysia.
Kevin Costello juga terima kasih karena keramah taman yang dia buat di Malaysia pada waktu itu.
You know, I was thinking when I referred to my interview with Pastor Montero the other day.
Oke, saya mulai berpikir tentang percakapan saya dengan Montero pada waktu dia bebas dari
It
penjara.
was a very life-changing experience for me to talk to that man after he got out of prison.
Dan itu memiliki pengalaman perubahan hidup setelah kita berbicara dengan orang yang baru keluar dari penjara.
I was so impressed with his courage and his faith, even though he had gone through 22 months of prison.
Saya sangat terkesan dengan iman daripada pendeta Montero yang sudah di penjara 22 bulan.
And so this is what he told me.
Ini yang dia katakan.
I asked him, I said, well, how did you survive through this experience?
Saya tanya kepada dia, bagaimana engkau bisa selamat dari pengalaman yang sangat sakit
He
itu?
said, I felt that God gave me a mission to do there, and I wanted to perform that mission.
Montero katakan, saya berpikir ini misi datang dari Tuhan yang mana saya harus lakukan untuk pekerjaan
He
ini.
said, and I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I said, I'm going to believe in God, and God allowed this to happen for a reason.
Saya berhenti gantinya menyesali apa yang sudah pernah saya lakukan, tetapi menjadi satu pengalaman yang baru. Ini adalah misi yang datang dari Tuhan untuk saya lakukan.
He said, and I saw the prison transform into an evangelistic center.
Saya sudah melihat bahwasanya orang-orang yang di penjara itu adalah pusat penginjilan.
And he prayed with the men, and he gave Bible studies.
Dan dia doakan orang-orang di penjara itu dan ajar Alkitab.
He preached twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Dia berkhotbah 2 kali seminggu, Selasa dan Kamis.
They had church services and communion services.
Ada ibadah gereja dan juga persekutuan.
And last year they baptized 9 individuals, a baptism right there in the prison.
Dan terakhir 9 dibaptis di penjara.
Amen.
Amin.
So if you can do that in a prison, you can do that anywhere you are.
Anda bisa lakukan itu di penjara atau di mana saja Anda berada.
It makes no difference with the surroundings.
Membuat sesuatu hal yang berbeda di sekeliling
If the
Anda.
power of God is with you, you can transform that into something special.
Karena Roh Kudus akan bersama dan Anda akan mengubah hal itu.
And this is what Montero told me.
Dan ini yang Montero katakan kepada
He
saya.
said, when I got in there, he said, and I saw the way God was moving.
Jadi waktu saya mendapatkan pengalaman itu, saya lihat bahwa Tuhan menggerakkan saya.
He said, I felt power.
Saya katakan, ini kuasa.
He said, I felt fire.
Saya kuasa bakar.
And I was really kind of taken aback a little bit. I was really thrown off with that.
Saya pikir, wah ini benar-benar pengalaman yang luar biasa.
I mean, he actually got excited about it, and he said, power.
Dia betul-betul excited katakan kuasa.
And he said, fire.
Bakar ini. Fire.
And he really, I really kind of gathered from that surroundings don't make a difference.
Jadi memang saya mendapatkan pengaruh dari imannya dia membuat berbeda.
You can be in the most discouraging situation.
Anda bisa saja menjadi orang yang membuat patah semangat dari
But
situasi.
if you place your faith in a higher source,
Tetapi kalau Anda tempatkan sebagai orang yang memiliki iman dari mendapatkan sumber yang tertinggi,
God can transform that place.
Anda bisa ubah tempat itu.
Amen.
Amin.
So when you go back, regardless of what you face in your areas,
Jadi ketika Anda kembali ke tempat masing-masing, abaikan tentang bagaimana situasi Anda.
be encouraged
Jadilah orang yang berani.
and say like Ontario Montero,
Katakan seperti pendeta Montero. Power, kuasa, bakal.
I want to show you something here.
Saya mau tunjukkan sesuatu di sini.
Now, if I take this bill and I fold it up like this,
Kalau uang ini saya lipat-lipat seperti ini,
you still want it?
masih mau nggak?
If I take it and I fold it up like this, I want it.
Kalau saya rebuk-rebukan masih mau?
I still want it.
Masih mau itu kan Allah.
Still I want it.
Ya.
Why does he want this?
Kenapa Pak Ketua masih tetap mau walaupun uangnya sudah
I put it on the ground and he still wants it.
Kenapa masih mau?
Why?
Kenapa?
The value's in it no matter what I do to it, right?
Karena nilai dari
You
uang
can have it. It's his. All right. All right.
Kenapa?
It's yours. Now you can put that in church on Sabbath. You can't put that in church on Sabbath.
Kasih persembahan dari sahabat Pak.
That's how it is with men and women who run into problems in their life.
Seperti itulah kalau misalnya ada masalah dalam hidup kita,
Though they may be crumpled
yang mungkin akan membuat kita lumpuh atau susah,
or folded
atau mungkin terlipat hidup kita,
or bent out of shape,
atau begitu dipersip,
they still have value in the sight of God.
tapi kita masih punya nilai yang dalam di mata Tuhan.
God looks inside and he sees the value in all of us.
Tuhan melihat nilai di dalam diri Anda.
And he wants us to do the same thing with other people.
Dia mau Anda juga melihat hal yang sama kepada orang lain.
So we don't just see what's on the outside,
Jadi jangan lihat hanya di luar pandangan
but we
aja.
see deeper inside the value that God has for them.
Tapi lihat di dalam nilai yang dilihat oleh Tuhan.
That should influence everything we do and say as ministers and as leaders.
Kalau kita punya pandangan seperti itu akan mempengaruhi cara kita melayani sebagai
And
pemimpin.
that's what we're going to talk about today with mentoring.
Inilah yang akan kita bicarakan.
Mentoring in life and leadership,
Mementoring dalam kehidupan dan kepemimpinan.
or talking about being a friend,
Atau sebagai teman, mentor ya, sebagai teman.
loving someone,
Mengasihi sesama.
reaching out and touching someone.
Yang menjangkau seseorang.
And I believe you are going to be inspired when you see the tools that are in this
Dan
presentation.
saya percaya saudara-saudara akan terinspirasi melihat dua bahan ini.
So I want you to reach deep. I want you to reach deep
Saya mau Anda sebagai pemimpin boleh menjangkau lebih dalam lagi.
and stir up your thinking
Mulai berpikir,
as we go on a rather quick journey.
bagaimana kita sedang dalam perjalanan sesi ini.
Now I confess I do not have this presentation in your notebooks,
Dan saya akui bahwasanya apa yang saya sampaikan ini tidak ada dalam notebook.
nor did I have the one yesterday morning,
Demikian juga yang kemarin.
but I will give it to Pastor Samuel and he will have it available. Okay? Okay.
Sudah ada dalam.
And by the way, at the end of this presentation, there is a resource list of free downloadable books that can get online.
Di akhir daripada presentasi ini ada sumber-sumber yang bisa di-download secara online.
About leadership principles and various things that you might find of great value.
Tentang prinsip-prinsip kepemimpinan yang bisa kita
So I trust she will look into that.
dan saya percaya kita akan cari.
First of all, let's look at a simple principle I like to share wherever I go. I like to you look at a simple principle I share wherever I go.
Oke, ini prinsip pertama sebagai pemimpin yang harus kita
It's
lihat.
called the leader's outcome key.
Hasil kunci berhasilnya seorang pemimpin.
Or a leadership principle.
Prinsip kepemimpinan.
It's called E plus R equals O.
E tambah R sama dengan O.
And it means simply that this formula always works.
Dan formula ini biasanya berhasil dalam pekerjaan.
Meaning there's never a time when it's not true.
Jadi artinya tidak ada waktu yang mengatakan bahwa ini tidak benar.
Now the E stands for what?
E itu kepanjangan dari apa?
The E stands for event. The E stands for event.
Event, kejadian, peristiwa.
So the event happens here, and then we see when you put the plus R, it equals the O.
Jadi kalau peristiwa ditambah R sama dengan O.
So what then is the O?
Apa itu O?
All right, you say outcome, and you're absolutely right. So event plus something equals the outcome.
Jadi peristiwa ditambah sesuatu akan ada hasilnya.
What does the R stand for?
Apa kepanjangan A?
I heard it, response or your reaction to that, and you're absolutely right.
Bisa saya benar ya, reaksi atau
Events
respon.
happen in our lives,
Peristiwa terjadi dalam hidup kita,
and as a result of that event, there's going to be an outcome.
dan dari hasil suatu peristiwa yang terjadi dalam kita akan ada hasilnya, dampaknya.
But the determining factor of what that outcome is your response to it.
Tapi yang menentukan hasil daripada peristiwa itu adalah bagaimana kita menyambutnya, meresponsnya.
Bad things happen.
Hal yang buruk terjadi.
That's inevitable in a world of sin.
Itu adalah satu peristiwa yang sama bagi semua.
Dr. Gibson was talking about that this morning with our worldview.
Pendeta Gibson sudah sampaikan bagaimana pandangan dunia.
We have problems in the world and bad things happen all the time.
Kita memiliki masalah-masalah di dunia ini.
But our response to those events will determine the outcome.
Jadi bagaimana kita merespons peristiwa itu, itulah hasil daripada tindakan
I
outcome.
think it's well illustrated by the story of Joni Eareckson Tada.
Ada cerita
Joni Eareckson Tada.
Joni Eareckson and Tada.
She was a beautiful young lady some years ago who had her life before. She was full of energy and a great vision for life.
Dia adalah wanita yang cantik dan bersemangat dalam hidupnya.
She went out and she took a dive one day, and the pool was less deep than she thought it was, and she broke her neck and paralyzed her neck down.
Dia berenang di kolam renang, rupanya airnya hanya setengah, akhirnya dia lumpuh karena lehernya kena.
It was a terrible experience.
Itu pengalaman yang sangat mengerikan.
This beautiful lady who was reduced to literally one who had used a wheelchair from then on.
Wanita cantik akhirnya menjadi wanita yang lumpuh di kursi roda.
Joni said for years she was in for months she was in a discouraged, dark, despondent state.
Joni katakan untuk hampir sebulan dia tidak responnya sangat gelap, tidak ada.
The event happened and that was her response. She was discouraged, she was dark, and she was down.
Jadi peristiwa terjadi, cara dia menyambut, dia sangat jatuh, patah semangat.
But one day she said, God is still alive.
Tapi satu hari dia katakan, Allah itu masih hidup.
God still loves me.
Allah masih mencintaiku.
Why am I down?
Kenapa saya harus patah semangat?
It was like David said in the book of Psalms, why art thou disquieted within me, my soul?
Sama seperti yang dikatakan Daud, kenapa saya harus patah semangat? Semangat saya hilang.
Hope in God.
Berharaplah kepada Tuhan.
Lift your sights up.
Angkat diri kita ke atas.
And so Joni then changed her thinking, and she chose to look at that bad event in a different light.
Lalu si Joni ini mengubah cara berpikir daripada gadis ini untuk memulai
Bad event happened, she had a bad response at first.
Jadi pertama, di peristiwa terjadi, tapi sambutannya jelek, negatif.
She changed her response.
Kemudian dia rubah cara dia menghadapi
All
peristiwa.
of a sudden, the outcome was entirely different.
Maka dengan tiba-tiba hasilnya, dampaknya lebih berubah lebih baik.
And once she saw darkness and hopelessness, now she saw a ministry that God could use with her.
Tadinya dia lihat dunia begitu gelap, sekarang dia lihat ada kesempatan pelayanan yang bisa dilakukan.
Joni began to write with the pencil with her mouth.
Lalu Joni mulai menulis dengan mulutnya,
She began to draw with the pencil in her mouth.
dengan mulai menggambar dengan mulutnya.
She was married. She became married. She was married to a guy by the name of Tada.
Dia menikah dengan Tada.
And she started a radio program called Joni and Friends, in which she had a special ministry to people who had a disability.
Dan dia mulai program radio Joni dan teman untuk orang-orang yang lumpuh.
How did it happen?
Bagaimana itu terjadi?
She changed her view.
Dia ubah sudut pandangnya.
And that made all the difference in the world.
Dan akhirnya mengubah daripada
So,
peristiwa
my
dunia.
brothers and sisters, how we look at life and how we respond to it makes all the difference in the world.
Jadi saudara-saudaraku, bagaimana cara kita melihat sesuatu dan bagaimana kita menyambutnya akan mengubah peristiwa di
That
dunia.
is a key principle of leadership.
Itu adalah kunci seorang pemimpin dalam
I
sukses.
challenge you, even as we have the illustration with the money, that you go away from here and you are determined that you're going to see people in the right light.
Saya tantang Anda, walaupun seperti yang cerita tadi tentang uang, walaupun sudah hancur tapi nilainya ada, kita juga sebagai pemimpin, lihatlah sesama ada nilai yang tidak bisa dirubah.
Even if they mistreat you or don't treat you the way you deserve, still you view them in the right light.
Meskipun sesama Anda memperlakukan Anda tidak benar, tetapi perlakukanlah mereka dengan baik.
And I know God will bless you with that.
Dan Anda akan terberkati untuk kalau melakukan itu.
I want to give you an illustration from my own life.
Saya mau memberikan ilustrasi dari pengalaman hidup
I
saya.
believe that leadership is like a journey or even like a marathon.
Saya percaya memimpin itu adalah suatu pengalaman hidup dalam mukjizat dalam kehidupan.
Some of you know that I like to run marathons.
Mungkin Anda tahu bahwa saya senang maraton olahraga.
A marathon is 42 kilometers or 26.2 miles.
Maraton itu harus mencapai 42 km atau sekian mile.
How many have run a marathon here today?
Siapa yang suka maraton di sini?
Oh, Brother Mike is okay. I see.
Mike
Number of
Ryan.
hands. Okay, a few hands.
Teman ulang.
But that was one of my challenges some 20-some years ago.
Itulah tantangan saya 20 tahun yang lalu.
I wanted to run a marathon.
Saya mau berlari dengan maraton.
And so as a result of this dream or this idea, I began to do it, I began to train for it, and as a result I've run more than 50 marathons now.
Karena itulah impian saya dan membuat dorongan, ide, akhirnya saya sudah melakukan 50 kali maraton dalam
My
hidup
goal is
saya.
to run a marathon in all 50 states in the United States.
Dan saya juga sudah melakukan lari maraton di 50 provinsi di
But
Amerika.
I've run 35 so far.
Dan sudah 35 provinsi, state di Amerika.
And I've run a marathon on all the 7 continents.
Dan saya sudah ikut di 7 benua.
So all the 7 continents, I ran a marathon when I was president of Oakwood University. I raised money for student scholarships.
Dan saya lakukan maraton ini di berbagai benua untuk mencari dana untuk biaya sekolah.
And so it's kind of a way to keep in health and to raise money and to set a good example for the student with healthful living. Where's Abe Carpina? Is he here?
Mana pendeta Karpena?
Okay, I don't see him.
Jadi di samping saya olahraga, saya juga kasih contoh yang baik kepada mahasiswa untuk bagaimana berolahraga dan mendapatkan uang sekolah.
And so I began to run marathons. But after you run all 7 marathons on the continents, there's what they call is the Grand Slam.
Kalau sudah selesai melakukan maraton di 7 benua, maka masuk kepada tahap Grand Slam.
And the Grand Slam is after you run the 7 continents, then you have to run a marathon on a North Pole, which is not a continent.
Jadi setelah Grand Slam, maka masuk kepada North Pole, yang bukan kontinen, bukan bagian dari benua.
It's a slab of ice for 3 months out of the year.
Itu berlari di tempat es yang sudah ada 3 bulan jadi es.
In the Arctic Ocean.
Di benua Arktika.
And so the Russians have an expedition that they put together, and they take people there to run a marathon on that block of ice, which is around 4 miles. You keep running the 4 miles around and around and around until you get 26 miles.
Jadi ekspedisi Rusia membawa orang yang mau ikut ke sana dan mengelilingi 6 mile.
And so in 2010, I went to there to run the marathon in the North Pole.
Wow, dia ikut itu lari di tempat es sana.
So you start off with Longyearbyen, Camp Barneo is what it's called. And it's there for about 6 weeks, I should say, that we stay in tents on the Arctic, the ice cap.
Jadi 6 minggu mereka ada di sana berkemah di tempat yang beres.
It's a journey, it's a challenge.
Itu adalah satu perjalanan dan tantangan.
And there you see the plane that flew us from Longyearbyen, Norway, to the North Pole.
Inilah pesawat yang membawa kami dari Longyearbyen ke North Pole.
And that's proof that I was getting on the plane.
Dan saya naik pesawat itu dia.
And that's the group of people there who ran the marathon, about 26 of them.
Itu ada 26 orang bersama beliau yang pergi untuk berlari
That's
di
one of the
tempat
sites you see there in the North Pole.
Itulah transportasi lokal yang mereka bawa untuk menuju kepada North Pole.
And here's what you also see in certain part, let's say, if you're there about the middle, maybe 2 months in, you begin to see the ice beginning to crack.
Nah, kalau kita sudah berada di sana dalam beberapa waktu kita akan lihat es itu sudah mulai melepuh.
And so obviously you have to run the marathon and get off that ice cap before it breaks up.
Jadi kita harus segera lari dan jangan sampai itu es mencair.
But there it was, and right there around in 2010, when the group there was ready to run the marathon.
Disitulah mereka sudah mau mulai melakukan maraton.
And here we go, starting to run the race.
Ini 25 orang berlari.
And that's me right there, bib number 1.
Wow, dia nomor 1 di antara 25 peserta.
You can't see my face, but I promise you I'm there.
Anda tidak lihat wajah saya, Delbert, tapi pastilah saya di situ.
I was the second oldest man there.
Saya orang kedua yang paling tua di sana.
It's very cold. We had about 3 layers of ice, clothing on to protect us from the ice and cold.
Sangat dingin sampai berlapis 3 itu baju.
It's about 20 degrees below zero.
20 degree di bawah nol.
You can't even imagine it here in Bali.
Nggak bisa bayangkan di Bali ini.
And so there are some sights you see.
Lihat itu pemandangan di kiri kanan.
It was a blizzard, and actually a blizzard started when we were there.
Itu salju yang mulai berpuk.
It was an absolutely terrible experience.
Ini adalah pengalaman yang sangat menyedihkan.
I really had to struggle with the E+R=O formula.
Dan saya sangat bergumul tentang rumus sukses pemimpin itu. E tambah R sama dengan
There is so much pain and it's so cold that you begin to hallucinate and see things.
Terlalu banyak kesakitan, kedinginan yang membuat kita berilusi.
I begin to see angels and horses.
Saya sudah mulai lihat ada malaikat, ada kuda-kuda.
I even thought I saw my wife one time.
Bahkan kadang-kadang terpintas wajah istri
And
saya.
I knew I was going crazy then.
Dan saya tahu bakal gila saya.
But we had to keep going.
Tapi kami harus tetap lanjutkan maraton.
I think this is one of the most inspirational things I've ever seen.
Oh, ini adalah inspirasi yang baik yang bisa saya lihat pada pemandangan ini.
This gentleman here. I'll show you a picture of him in a moment. He is visually impaired. He's blind.
Oh, orang yang di sebelah kanan itu adalah orang buta.
And his friend came with him from London. He was determined that even though he was blind, he was going to run that marathon on the North Pole.
Orang London ini mau menolong orang buta dari Jerman itu berlari di North Pole.
And so his sighted friend is helping the guy who's visually impaired, who's blind, with a little rope, and they ran all 26.2 miles.
Jadi dia buat tali untuk menarik ini orang buta melakukan maraton 26 mile, 26,6 mile.
That's determination.
Itu adalah sesuatu tujuan yang harus dicapai.
He didn't allow things to stop him from reaching his dream and going for his goal.
Tidak mengabaikan apapun yang menyentuh mimpi untuk dicapai.
And so here we are running out there on the North Pole.
Inilah pemandangan kami lari di North Pole.
And I'm happy to say, in spite of the strong winds and the blizzard, all of the people finished the marathon, even including the gentleman who was blind.
Semua hambatan bisa kami lalui.
And that's Baker right there finishing.
Dan kami mencapai garis akhir.
And just by the way, Mark Finley told me, he said, Delbert, when you run across the finish line, you need to have the Bible in your hand.
Dr. Mark mengajukan kepada dia kalau sudah sampai di garis akhir pegang Alkitab.
And I really kind of struggle with that because the Bible represented extra weight.
Karena ini cukup berkumpulan karena dengan membawa Alkitab itu jadi tambah beban berat.
But it's the Word of God, so I carried the Bible, and that was a real sacrifice, and the Lord blessed me to finish the race.
Amen. Tapi karena itu firman Tuhan, ada pengeluaran sedikit, tapi memang jadi berkat. Saya bisa mencapai garis akhir.
And there I am with the gentleman who is visually impaired.
Nah, inilah orang yang buta itu dari Jerman.
He was such an inspiration, and I was so moved by him. He actually lost his sight when he was fighting in a war, but
Dia adalah orang buta karena perang.
But he wanted to do this, and it was a goal that he had, and nothing was going to stop him.
Dia punya tujuan mau ikut maraton ini, tak ada apapun yang bisa menghalangi dia.
And following the race, we all went to the exact top of the world, the North Pole.
Dan setelah menyelesaikan itu maraton, kami memang berada di paling puncak North
And that
Pole.
literally was the top, 90 degrees north.
Kutub utara yang paling tinggi.
And so now I can say that I am truly bipolar.
Dan saya sudah menjadi seorang bipolar.
I mean, not mentally speaking, but that means that I ran the North Pole and I also ran the South Pole.
Dua kali beliau ikut ya, kutub utara dan kutub selatan kompetisi 2010-2008.
I learned a lot from that.
Saya banyak belajar dari kejadian ini.
It really does speak to me about a parable of leadership.
Jadi betul-betul mengajarkan kepada saya perumpamaan bagaimana memimpin.
You set a goal, you want to reach this goal.
Kalau kita sudah menentukan satu tujuan dan mau mencapai tujuan itu,
You want to be a servant leader, you want to pursue some aim or some objective you have.
Anda mau menjadi pemimpin yang melayani dan mau mempengaruhi lingkungan Anda supaya mencapai tujuan.
But in the course of doing that, you run into a lot of challenges.
Tapi dalam melaksanakan ini banyak sekali tantangan.
It could be people, or it could be weather, or it could be financial issues.
Bisa saja tantangan dari sesama, atau cuaca, atau masalah keuangan.
Just like a race.
Sama seperti berlari ini.
But you focus your eyes on that goal, that finish line.
Tapi kalau kita selalu menetapkan pandangan kepada tujuan harus selesai.
And even though you struggle and you have to run into problems, you don't give up.
Walaupun memang ada pergumulan dan persoalan, tetapi jangan menyerah.
My average marathon was about 4.5, 5 hours. That's what I normally run.
Biasanya kalau saya berlari maraton itu 4 sampai 5 jam setiap lari.
That one took me close to 7 hours.
Itu hampir 7 jam selalu kalau saya
It
lakukan.
was a very difficult race.
Itu adalah pertandingan yang sangat susah.
But it's something I had in my mind and I was not going to stop until I reached it.
Tapi ada yang saya tetapkan dalam pikiran saya, apapun itu saya tidak mau berhenti sebelum saya capai garis
I
akhir.
ask you, what is your goal?
Saya tanya Anda, apa tujuan Anda?
What are you seeking to pursue?
Apa yang Anda akan capai untuk Anda usahakan?
What BHAG or what magnificent obsession fills your mind?
Obsesi yang besar apa yang ada dalam pikiran Anda?
And are you willing to make all the sacrifices to reach it?
Dan apakah Anda mau membuat satu pengorbanan yang luar biasa untuk mencapai tujuan itu?
That's the leadership parable of the marathon.
Itulah pelajaran kepemimpinan dari belajar maraton.
And here's a little commercial.
Permainan maraton.
Here's a little commercial. And all you're pursuing, don't forget your family.
Dan ada sedikit komersil, jangan lupa keluarga Anda.
Don't forget your wife and your children and your husband.
Jangan lupa istri, suami, anak-anak Anda.
And so here it is. I was at the top of the mountain, and my wife, she said, Delbert, her name is Susan. She said, Delbert, would you please bring me some snow from the North Pole?
Jadi istrinya katakan, jangan lupa Delbert bawa itu salju dari kutub utara.
That was a little difficult to do, but what I did do is I took the snow from the South Pole and put it in a bottle.
Dan memang sulit untuk membawa oleh-oleh salju ini. Kalau saya taruh di botol saljunya,
And it turned into water.
akhirnya mencair jadi air.
And so there I am presenting it to my wife. After 15,000 miles, I presented the water to her.
Jadi saya bawa oleh-oleh salju 15.000 mile jauhnya kepada istri.
You know, I say this by, it's kind of making it like a little joke in a way.
Nah, waktu saya kasih, saya katakan sesuatu yang lucu.
But I'm really serious.
Tapi saya sebenarnya serius.
Don't forget your family.
Apapun itu, jangan lupa keluarga Anda.
In all your leadership pursuits and all of your great things from God, don't forget the basic things of your children and your husband and your wife.
Di dalam segala upaya Anda dalam memimpin mencapai tujuan, jangan lupa keluarga.
Amen.
Amin.
Amen.
Amin.
So when you go home, you ought to do something nice for your wife.
Jadi kalau pulang, lakukan sesuatu yang indah dan mesra kepada
Do
suami.
something nice for your husband.
Buat sesuatu yang baik buat suami Anda.
Go home and be so energized with this meeting and this conference and say, honey, I want to take you out to dinner.
Jadi pulanglah dengan semangat, dengan rasa capek. Istriku atau suamiku, ayo kita melakukan sesuatu yang baik indah.
Tell her you want to give her some flowers and tell him you want to buy him a new tie.
Katakan kepada dia bahwasanya Anda akan memberikan bunga atau dasi baru.
And your spouse will be so excited,
Pasangan Anda akan begitu semangat.
they'll say, well, you better go to another conference.
Nanti dia akan pergi lagi ke seminar berikut. Ya, perhatikan keluarga kita.
Real quickly, before we go on, I just want to show you a couple things for your interest.
Berikut sesuatu hal yang mau saya tunjukkan untuk kepemimpinan.
We talked about leadership, and I want to show you that leadership really is a journey.
Jadi saya mau sampaikan bahwasanya memimpin itu adalah sebuah perjalanan hidup.
Every leader starts off in the formative years, from their teen years to young adulthood.
Untuk menjadi pemimpin, ya formatnya itu dimulai pada waktu remaja.
And that's where you lay the footprint or the foundation of leadership.
Itulah fondasi daripada seseorang yang berjiwa pemimpin.
You have 3 ways you can go.
Ada 3 hal bagaimana untuk jadi pemimpin.
You can follow with que sera, sera, which means that just whatever way happens, happens.
Jalan pertama adalah ya kesera-sera, apapun yang terjadi, terjadilah.
No real aim, you don't study, you don't take any notes, you don't think about leadership, just whatever way you turn out, you're willing to do it.
Dalam hidup Anda tidak punya tujuan, tidak punya ada belajar, dalam apa saja yang terjadi, itu saja yang Anda jalani.
Or you can be more the structured type, or the organized type, who kind of lays out a career path and a plan organized.
Atau sebaliknya, Anda dalam mulai remaja sudah mulai melatih, membuat satu perencanaan dan mencapai apa yang sudah direncanakan.
Or you can see leadership as an evolving journey that you're always getting better, getting better, getting better.
Atau bisa juga kita menjadi seorang pemimpin karena melihat perjalanan hidup kita dari hari ke hari semakin baik.
I think I will remember Pastor Gavan's statement about the largest room in the world is a room for self-improvement.
Saya ingat apa yang dikatakan Pendeta Gulfan bahwasanya pergumulan yang paling luar biasa dalam hidup kita adalah bagaimana memperbaharui self-improvement.
Ellen White has a similar quotation when she mentions more than 50 times in her writings.
Dan itu didukung oleh tulisannya yang White 50 kali.
And she says our greatest duty to God and man is that of self-development or self-improvement.
Jadi White katakan tugas utama daripada laki-laki dan perempuan adalah dari hari ke hari kita memperbaharui diri kita semakin sempurna seperti karakter itu.
So there are no instant leaders.
Jadi nggak ada pemimpin yang instan.
Drucker was right.
Drucker benar. Si Drucker itu, Peter Drucker benar.
I mean, this is a journey. This is evolving. You're getting better and better.
Karena memang pemimpin itu adalah sesuatu perjalanan hidup dari hari ke hari semakin lebih baik.
I heard Pastor Gufan say that no matter how many of these leadership programs he's attended, and I think he's been to most of them, he said he's always learning something new at every session.
Jadi Pendeta Gufan katakan, walaupun saya mengikuti berulang-ulang seminar-seminar kepemimpinan, mesti selalu ada yang baru saya temukan.
That really is where it's all about.
Dan itulah yang sedang saya mau sampaikan kepada kita.
You can be in ministry 20, 30, or 40 years, you still can learn something, you still can get better.
Kita bisa jadi ketua atau pemimpin 20, 30, 40 tahun lebih baik setiap saat.
And here's the link that I want to show you with mentoring.
Dan inilah yang saya mau tunjukkan bagaimana memimpin melalui mentor.
And that these show the stages of your leadership journey.
Inilah perjalanan seorang pemimpin.
And this shows the age of it here.
Dan di bawah ini adalah format usia.
And the bottom part shows the phase.
Yang pertama adalah fase pertama.
So up to about 30 years of age, you're about a novice. You're learning the basics of leadership. You don't know it all. You're kind of cutting your teeth on it, so to speak.
Biasanya dari 0 sampai 30 tahun kita belum memahami apa itu kepemimpinan, tapi kita pelajari itu dari kehidupan kita.
And then from about 30-ish to 60-ish, it's called the phase to the experience stage.
Lalu dari usia 30 sampai 20 itu kita melihat kepemimpinan fase kedua, belajar dari pengalaman.
And studies show that as the character's forming, you're experiencing the world, you're stepping up, and you're peaking around the time of 60-ish, give or take something.
Menurut yang dipelajari oleh para ahli, melalui pelajaran itu kita bisa memimpin dan belajar mengalami kepemimpinan.
Studies show that that's when a woman and a man peaks around the leadership time in the late 50s, early 60s, around that period.
Jadi menurut para ahli bahwasanya mulai usia 50-60 itulah hal yang paling puncak pengalaman pemimpin kita.
So then you have novice, experience, and phase 3 is the wisdom stage or phase.
Baru masuk ke fase ketiga adalah pengalaman mendapatkan menjadi pemimpin yang bijaksana. Ya.
Now this is a mellow time in your life when you're reflective, you're kind of thinking about what you've done, and you want to unselfishly give back if it works.
Dan di fase ketiga itu adalah masa melo, ya, masa merenungkan, wah kalau seandainya saya kemarin lakukan ini, selalu berpikir tentang apa yang sudah sukses maupun yang belum berhasil kita lakukan
I don't
di masa
know
lalu.
if you can see it very clearly here, but it's undulated, it's up and down. The red line is going up and down, showing that it's not a straight path up, but we have our falls along the way.
Gambar yang mau ditunjukkan di sini adalah kita sebagai pemimpin dalam menghadapi fase pertama, kedua, ketiga, tidak ada garis lurus, tetapi ada naik dan turun.
But ideally, the trajectory is always moving upward, upward, up, even though you have your ups and downs.
Tapi pastikan bahwasanya pengalaman kepemimpinan itu selalu menaik dan mendapatkan hal yang
And here's
lebih
what brings us to where we are today.
dan itulah kita sekarang sedang berada dalam.
And that is the crucibles.
Di masa 30, 50, 60, 70 itu adalah poin yang puncak kita masa memimpin.
The first crucible is, will you really learn the basics right?
Maukah kita belajar untuk menjadi pemimpin yang benar?
I mean, like if you have the concept of it's all about power and being served, that's the wrong worldview, and as a result of that, that can throw you all off for the rest of your leadership time.
Di masa seperti ini, kalau kita memiliki pandangan yang salah, bahwasanya untuk menjadi pemimpin harus memiliki kekuasaan dan tidak mau kita ubah, maka kita akan jadi pemimpin yang buruk.
If you feel you always must be number one and first and have a prominent place, that's the wrong worldview.
Apalagi kalau kita berpikir menjadi pemimpin itu harus jadi nomor 1, orang yang top, itu dalam pandangan salah.
That can disease the rest of your leadership life.
Dan itu akan membuat kepemimpinan kita semakin menurun.
But if you have the servant leadership concept and you're really here to serve, that's a wonderful worldview.
Tapi kalau kita mau belajar menjadi pemimpin yang melayani servant leadership, maka kita akan menjadi pemimpin yang lebih baik lagi.
The second crucible is the period of will I give back from what I've learned?
Poin kedua dalam usia kritis kepemimpinan kita, apakah kita mau memberikan, mau giving back apa yang sudah kita alami, bagikan kepada orang.
So it's like, did I get it right and will I give it back?
Jadi, apakah saya sudah lakukan ini benar dan saya mau bagikan kepada orang lain?
And that's what we're talking about today.
Dan itulah yang mau saya sampaikan sekarang.
So I think we have the concept pretty much down with mentoring. I think we do understand conceptually what it's about.
Saya pikir Anda mengerti konsepnya, karena kita mau bicara tentang mentoring. Mentoring itu membagikan pengalaman kepemimpinan.
It's really sharing your wisdom with someone.
Membagikan kebijaksanaan kita kepada orang lain. Jangan disimpan-simpan itu ilmu.
It's a leader being a friend to another leader.
Jadi untuk menjadikan teman kita pemimpin seperti yang sudah kita
It's
lakukan.
unselfishly giving of your experience so that others can profit from your experience and they don't have to make the same mistake.
Itu adalah pelayanan yang membuat orang lain jadi pemimpin supaya mereka tidak lakukan kesalahan yang pernah kita lakukan pada waktu kita memimpin.
Mentoring is more informal, coaching is more structured.
Mentoring adalah pendidikan informal yang bisa kita bagikan kepada sesama.
So that's what I'm talking about for a few moments.
Inilah yang mau dibicarakan.
Now, I will show you some definitions here, but I won't take time and go into all of them.
Pasti ada banyak definisi yang bisa kita lihat dalam buku, tapi saya tidak akan terangkan banyak
Because
waktu.
probably, maybe half of the people here are probably doing some type of mentoring already.
Karena saya percaya separuh dari ruangan ini, para pemimpin sudah melakukan secara alamiah mementor sesama jadi pemimpin.
You may not call it that, but that's what you're doing.
Mungkin kita tidak bilang, saya lagi mementor, tapi itulah prinsipnya.
Woman or man, boy or girl,
Laki perempuan,
they need good wisdom and advice from people who have experienced.
mereka membutuhkan kata-kata bijak, tuntunan dari orang-orang yang sudah berpengalaman.
That's why we have mentoring in life and leadership.
Itulah mementor kehidupan, pola hidup mentoring dan pemimpin.
And just really temporarily, probably many of you are mentoring even at this session itself.
Bahkan mungkin dari dalam sesi ini kita sudah melakukan mentoring kepada diri kita sendiri.
You say, well, what are you talking about?
Jadi mungkin apa yang
Well, I mean, like, for example, if you meet somebody here and they ask you, well, what do you think about this? Or I got this problem here. What is your advice?
Mungkin tanpa kita sadari, kita sharing dengan teman, saya butuh uang, bagaimana mencapai buat program ini, apa nasihatmu?
It's like a temporary mentoring situation.
Jadi itu adalah situasi mementor temporer.
Or this right here could be a large mentoring session when we've all the leaders here getting their experience to you in these lectures and presentations.
Dan sesi leadership ini juga adalah bagian mentor, ya. Karena selama 3-4 hari kami memberikan ilmu-ilmu pengalaman yang kami alami untuk bahagia daripada seluruh peserta.
Look at this statement here.
Lihat di ilustrasi.
Christian ministry and leadership was never meant to be a soul journey.
Jadi pelayanan Kristen dan pemimpin Kristen bukanlah bertujuan jalan sendiri-sendiri.
Everyone needs support and advice. They need guidance and assistance.
Semua membutuhkan dukungan dan tuntunan.
So I want to answer four basic questions. What is mentoring?
Jadi saya mau tanya 4 pertanyaan. Apa itu mentoring?
Why is it important?
Kenapa itu perlu?
How do I do it?
Bagaimana saya lakukan?
And what will happen if I do it?
Dan apa yang terjadi kalau saya lakukan?
The first one is, what is mentoring?
Jadi yang pertama, apa itu mentoring?
Basically, a mentor is, as I just said, a tutor or a coach or a counselor or a guide or friend.
Jadi mentor itu adalah seorang tutor, pelatih, penasehat, penuntun, dan teman.
You basically are transferring your experience to someone else.
Berdasarkan pengalaman pribadi yang kita alihkan atau transfer kepada orang lain.
You're kindly or graciously giving of things you've learned on your journey to someone who might profit from it.
Secara baik dan natural kita bagikan pengalaman kita kepada orang lain.
Pastor Stone, a pastor and writer, said this.
Dan pendeta David Stone katakan seperti
He
ini.
said, through the years, prayer, Bible studies, share group participation, and regular worship have been important to me.
Bagi David Stone, bahwasanya selama bertahun-tahun doa, belajar Alkitab, berpartisipasi dalam grup dan ibadah reguler itu adalah penting bagi saya.
But he said, never has anything been as powerfully important to me as having a spiritual friend.
Tapi dari semua itu ada hal yang lebih penting lagi adalah ada ada teman rohani.
Now here's an experienced, successful pastor who's saying the best thing he can have is a friend who's by his side.
Jadi ini adalah kesaksian dari pendeta David Stone yang sukses dalam pelayanan. Bahwasanya yang paling penting di atas dari semua yang dia anggap penting adalah adanya teman rohani.
And we're talking about a spiritual friend here.
Kita berbicara tentang spiritual friend, teman rohani.
We're talking about spiritual leadership, not simply secular leadership giving basic leadership principles to someone.
Dan kita bicarakan tentang kepemimpinan rohani yang berbeda dengan pemimpin duniawi terhadap seseorang.
Yesterday when talking about Esther and Mordecai, I talked about the strong natural leader and the strong spiritual leader.
Kemarin kita bicara tentang Esther, bagaimana pemimpin yang alamiah dan juga yang kuat.
And this is the secular approach and this is the spiritual approach.
Ini adalah approach daripada dunia sekular, sementara di sana rohani.
And the difference between a wise, discerning leader and one who's not wise is if they can tell the difference.
Jadi inilah perbedaan dari pemimpin yang bijaksana dengan yang tidak bijaksana.
In other words, can you see the gap between the secular approach and the spiritual approach?
Lihat itu gap batasan daripada ajaran duniawi dengan rohani.
So in other words, when you're real good, you can read a book and you can immediately tell if this book is a spiritually based leadership approach or a secular based.
Jadi bisa saja kita baca, ambil informasi dari buku, bagaimana pendekatan kepemimpinan mengajar kepada sesama dari sudut cara duniawi maupun dari rohani.
The last leadership summit that was held in Australia, the theme was spiritual leadership.
Waktu kami melakukan seminar di Australia kepemimpinan, kita punya tema adalah bagaimana pemimpin rohani.
My sisters and brothers, this is very important.
Karena itu adalah hal yang paling penting.
When you go back to your churches and your conferences and your unions, you want to understand the difference and be able to kind of project a spiritual approach to this.
Jadi kalau kita kembali ke daerah, ke uni, ke jemaat, maka kita bisa ajarkan kepada jemaat, kepada teman-teman kita yang pemimpin, bagaimana kita memimpin secara rohani, ajaran yang diajarkan oleh Tuhan.
Where it's not about pride and power.
Bukan membicarakan tentang kebanggaan dan kekuasaan.
In fact, one of my favorite quotations is by Ellen White.
Salah satu kutipan kesukaan saya dari Nyonya White.
And it's in the chapter from early writings, the chapter called To the Inexperienced.
Dari tulisan permulaan mengenai Today the Inexperienced.
And it's a fascinating chapter when she talks about how God's people spend a lot of time arguing and just fussing about non-essentials.
Ini pasal berisi tentang bagaimana umat-umat Tuhan di abad 19 saling beradu argumentasi pada waktu itu.
She says we spend a lot of time in our church meetings and our board meetings just arguing and talking about things that really don't make a difference.
Kita terlalu banyak waktu berdebat di dalam komite dan membicarakan doktrin dan apapun waktu itu.
But she draws the contrast and she talks about the spiritual leader.
Lalu Nyonya White menggambarkan, menerangkan tentang bagaimana seharusnya sebagai seorang pemimpin rohani.
And here's what she says.
Dan ini yang kata Nyonya White.
I call this the 5-minute rule.
Dan saya sebutkan ini sebagai peraturan 5 menit.
It is a powerfully simple quote.
Ini adalah suatu quotation yang kutipan yang berkuasa, sederhana.
But I guarantee you it's not easy to do.
Tapi saya jamin enggak mudah melakukan.
She says if pride and selfishness were laid aside,
Nyonya White katakan kalau di dalam kepemimpinan itu kebanggaan dan kecintaan diri diabaikan,
5 minutes would settle most difficulties.
Maka 5 menit akan menyelesaikan kesulitan dalam berkomite.
Put aside pride and selfishness, 5 minutes could settle most difficulties.
Jadi kalau 5 menit saja kita tinggalkan kepentingan diri dan kebanggaan atau kesombongan pribadi, selesai itu persoalan.
Why do we spend 50 minutes or 50 hours or 50 days on a problem?
Kenapa kita harus habiskan waktu 50 menit, 50 jam hanya untuk mempersoalkan masalah?
Because pride and selfishness are not laid aside.
Karena itu kesombongan, cinta diri tidak kita hilangkan.
Well, I hope when we go back, we will watch our pride and selfishness.
Saya berharap ketika kita kembali dari tempat ini, maka kita harus jaga dan hati-hati ini rasa kesombongan dan cinta diri.
You know, even do this in the home with your wife and husband.
Bahkan dalam rumah tangga terhadap suami istri.
You're about ready to get into a disagreement and then check yourself and say, is pride and selfishness getting in the way?
Kalau di dalam rumah tangga ada sesuatu yang mau diputuskan, lihat diri kita. Apakah keputusan yang mempengaruhi karena saya sombong atau cinta diri?
Let me put the 5-minute rule in there.
Oke, saya singkirkan dulu itu 2 hal 5 menit. Tidak jadi
That's spiritual leadership.
Dan itulah kepemimpinan rohani.
And we talked about that, the mentoring and coach and consultant.
Dan kita juga bicarakan tentang perbedaan consulting, mentoring, dan coaching.
Basically, a consultant comes in and they're not asking a lot of questions. They just do research, they do a lot of analysis, they come up with a series of recommendations and tell you what they think you should do to be successful. That's a
Kalau konsultasi itu konsultan, dia hanya meresearch, dia mencari apa masalahnya dan apa kata teori untuk menyelesaikan masalah itu.
A coach, on the other hand, is one who comes alongside you. He doesn't really give his opinion. He simply wants to find out what you're thinking and what you're dealing with, and he tries to draw that out like a coach does.
Sementara coaching atau pelatih, dia hanya memancing kita apa masalahnya dan apa menurutmu menyelesaikannya. Dia hanya bertanya dan banyak bertanya.
But mentoring is what most of us do.
Tapi kalau namanya mentoring, melakukan lebih daripada dua ini.
This is giving advice, it's sharing your experience, it's dialoguing back and forth with the person, listening to them.
Mentoring, dia tidak hanya bertanya dan mengadakan research, tapi juga dia memberikan nasihat dan juga membagikan pengalaman dia sebagai pemimpin.
We did a lot of mentoring when we were at Oakwood.
Kami melakukan mentoring pada waktu beliau di Oakwood.
We had two groups. One group we called Buds, and another group we called Suds.
Jadi ada dua grup, namanya Bud dan Sluts.
Well, the Buds were brothers under development for success.
Jadi Bud itu adalah bagi orang-orang anak muda yang mau sukses.
And the Suds were sisters under development for success.
Sementara Slut itu adalah untuk untuk wanita yang mau
And
berhasil.
so I would take like 5 or so young men, and my wife would take 5 or so young ladies.
Jadi beliau ambil 5 laki-laki, istrinya ambil 5 perempuan.
And they would track us for, we did it pretty much about a quarter a time.
Oke, kami lakukan seperempat.
And so they would follow us, they would sit in our meetings, they would talk to us, they'd ask us, why do we do what we do?
Lalu dalam pertemuan itu kami coba cari tahu kenapa kita lakukan ini, apa yang mau kita lakukan.
And it was a very simple program, but it was also very powerful.
Sederhana programnya tapi sangat berkuasa dampaknya.
And then we had a group called the President's Ambassadors, in which these people, we had like training with them once a month, and we taught them leadership principles.
Lalu kami buat seperti utusan duta untuk melatih mereka menjadi pemimpin.
Why do I share that with you? Because I think you can take ideas in your own setting and make it work for you wherever you are.
Kenapa saya bagikan ini? Mungkin saudara bisa lakukan itu di tempat Anda, bagaimana mementor orang.
It's amazing that those people who we mentored, they will come up to me even now today when I see them in different places. I say, oh, Dr. Baker, you helped me. I remember the time we worked together. They remembered it.
Dan yang luar biasanya, ini peristiwa sudah lama, tapi sampai saat ini, orang-orang yang kami mentor itu masih menghubungi saya dan berkata, terima kasih Dr. Baker, kamu mentor saya.
I remember people who helped me when I was an academy student and a student in college.
Saya ingat orang-orang yang menolong saya waktu kami sekolah di akademi.
So this mentoring, it's very meaningful, it's very powerful.
Jadi kepemimpinan dengan mentor ini sangat berarti dan berkuasa.
You're pouring from yourself into a person, you're pouring your life and your experience.
Karena Anda coba bersatu membentuk dia milik kepada Anda dan dia juga sama. Jadi ada sesuatu yang sama dalam
So
pengertian.
that's what mentoring is.
Itulah mentor.
So why is mentoring important?
Mengapa mentoring itu penting?
Because there's so many benefits with it.
Karena itu ada keuntungannya.
I mean, it's a winner all around. I mean, there's really no need to make a defensive.
Jadi itu sederhana dibuat, tetapi bermanfaat, tidak perlu dilakukan sesuatu yang
It helps people around you progress and advance. It allows experienced workers to share their wisdom.
Mendorong Anda untuk mendidik, mengalami kemajuan dan advance dalam kepemimpinan.
If as a president or an executive officer or a department head, if you can share your experience with others around you, that means they will be the better off for you sharing.
Jadi kalau kita sebagai pemimpin, ketua, sekretaris bendahara departemen, mementor orang lain, Anda sedang membentuk pendukung Anda yang kuat untuk mensukseskan pekerjaan.
So research across the line shows that teams and families operate better when mentoring is done.
Jadi sumber-sumber yang mendukung Anda akan semakin banyak ketika Anda melakukan mentor.
In fact, I love to study great leaders of the past, and almost to a one, all of these great leaders had people they mentored.
Jadi kalau saya senang belajar pengalaman hidup para pemimpin, saya lihat pemimpin yang besar adalah pemimpin yang mau melakukan mentor kepada bawahannya.
But that's only one side of it.
Tapi itu satu sisi.
People they mentored, but also people mentored them.
Jadi jangan lupa orang yang dia mentor, orang itu pun mementor dia.
Most of the great leaders will tell you the reason why they got to the point where they have gotten to is because of mentoring they received.
Jadi banyak orang, para pemimpin yang mau mentor orang lain karena memang dia sudah mendapatkan mentoring yang dia terima selama ini.
Study after study shows that by mentoring, productivity is increased as well as by coaching.
Pelajaran dari para ahli katakan bahwasanya produktivitas para pemimpin lebih baik meningkat 22% kalau dilakukan dengan
If you want to
pemimpin.
increase the productivity of your entity or your organization or your office or department, mentor.
Kalau mau mendapatkan hasil meningkat dalam memimpin, buatlah mementor.
Gordon MacDonald, a very experienced writer and a Christian leader who's gone through a lot of challenges in his own personal life.
Gordon MacDonald membagikan pengalaman bagaimana dia memimpin dengan memperlakukan orang lain sebagai teman dan partner.
He says, never before I've been more convinced that adult Christians need to form personal friendships with those who share their commitments and values.
Sebelumnya saya tidak begitu yakin bahwasanya orang Kristen berdewasa membutuhkan hubungan satu sama lain. Tetapi kita perlukan itu. Ya, persahabatan
Fourth
sesama
week
orang.
says, spiritual health demands a friend who walk alongside of you, speak truth to us even when it hurts, and keep us honest in our relationship with God and with other people.
Jadi tuntutan daripada rohani yang sehat adalah seorang teman yang mau berjalan bersama di samping kita, membicarakan hal yang benar, walaupun itu sakit, ya, dan menolong kita untuk memiliki hubungan baik dengan Tuhan.
So the mentor in a way is playing like the role of a paraclete, like one who is a counselor or like the Holy Spirit coming alongside of someone and helping them do their job.
Untuk menjadi mentor hampir sama seperti pekerjaan Roh Kudus yang memberikan peringatan dan mendukung dan menolong orang lain untuk boleh semakin sempurna sesuai dengan kehendak
It's
Tuhan.
a wonderful thing, this mentorship.
Itu adalah hal yang indah dalam mementor.
It shows that a leader is not off by himself like this little chess player here. It's not by itself, but it's really with the group, not a loner, but it's with the group.
Dengan melakukan kepemimpinan mentor, kita tidak melakukan saya sebagai pemimpin sendiri, tetapi saya bergabung bersama dengan tim, kita sama-sama melakukannya.
Yeah, and just to show you what Ellen White says about it, just a couple of quick little statements.
Dan ini yang dikatakan oleh Nyonya White dalam
She says, and I'm paraphrasing, things will go wrong with everyone. A friend who comforts and imparts strength, they help so much.
salah kepada semua orang bila mana seseorang yang akan
And so,
kalau tanpa seseorang akan terjadi hal yang salah. Jadi kita membutuhkan teman yang memberikan penghiburan dan kekuatan.
and then Ellen White, and we normally don't think of her in this way, she says, Christian friends are not half as plentiful as they should be.
Sebagai sahabat Kristen bukanlah sebahagian daripada apa yang harus dia lakukan.
She says, in the moment of a temptation or crisis, what a true friend, what a help a true friend is.
Tetapi teman yang benar adalah
She says they will give counsel and they will give hopefulness to their friends.
teman yang baik adalah mau memberikan nasihat, counsel.
And then she says, here, right here, such help is worth more than precious
Sungguh
pearls.
betapa pertolongan yang bernilai bagi mereka, bagaikan mutiara kalau ada teman yang mau memberikan nasihat.
I pastored for 10 years.
Saya menggembalakan 10 tahun.
And I had pastoral friends who I spoke to, who I could call and share problems with, and they would give me counsel back and forth.
Saya punya teman pendeta yang setiap saat siap untuk saya tolong untuk memberikan dukungan dan
In
nasihat.
every aspect of my ministry, I've had friends who I could call on and ask advice and give advice, and it was a good relationship, good friendship.
Jadi selama 10 tahun saya menggembalakan, ada teman pendeta yang bisa tempat saya untuk meminta pandangan dan nasihat.
Ellen says, how touching to see youth and old age relying upon one another, youth looking to the older. This is as it should be.
Ya, Nyonya White katakan sungguh betapa menyukakan ya melihat orang dewasa dan orang muda saling bekerja sama.
And then she says, that way the old and the young can be unified together.
Dan itulah caranya orang muda dan orang tua bisa bersatu dalam melayani.
Can we see the value in having friends?
Kita lihat nilai daripada sudut pandang surga, saudaraku.
If you're with me, say amen.
Kalau setuju katakan amin.
So we know what mentoring is, and we now know why it's important.
Nah, jadi sekarang kita sudah tahu apa itu mentoring dan mengapa itu penting.
You are basically helping people to be a success.
Nah, secara dasar Anda menolong orang lain untuk sukses.
Now let's look at how to do it.
Dan sekarang bagaimana melakukan?
How do you do mentoring?
Bagaimana kita mementor orang?
Now I'll hit this kind of quickly, but I'll just show you some Bible examples of how it's worked.
Saya akan bacakan ini apa kata Alkitab.
And probably the most well-known story in the Bible of mentoring in the Old Testament is, what's the story?
Kalau di Perjanjian Lama, cerita apa yang kita bisa lihat tokoh orang yang mementor?
What is it? Moses with who? Jethro was a good help too. Jethro was a true helping Moses. But who is the one here on the top of the mountain? Remember when the battle's being fought? Joshua's fighting in the valley, and who's with Moses? Hur and Aaron. That's right. They're on the right hand and left hand. They're helping Moses.
Oke. Mereka berdua ya menolong Musa untuk tetap tahan itu tongkat.
And the Bible brings out, I won't read this passage, but in Exodus 17, it talks about how this huge battle's being fought, and the Israelites against the Amalekites, and as long as Aaron and Hur are holding up the arms of Moses, they're victorious.
Jadi kita lihat dalam buku Keluaran 17 ayat 10 dan 12, peperangan begitu hebat terjadi, tapi selama Harun dan Maria menolong Musa memegang itu tongkat, maka
but every time they let down his hand, they would begin to lose.
Tapi kalau sudah capek, mulai kalah. Itu tongkat turun.
So what does this show us?
Jadi pelajaran apa yang kita bisa ambil?
Mentors do what? They provide support.
Apa?
Let's all say together. They do what?
Mentor melakukan apa? Provide support, membuat menyediakan dukungan.
That's a short version of it brought out by the Old Testament. Now here's the New Testament. Here's the New Testament example of a mentor here. Now, I'm wondering if you know who this mentor is. It's kind of the artist's conception. But it's a story in Acts, and who are we talking about?
Kalau cerita di Kisah 11, kita bicara tentang siapa?
Barnabas. The Bible says that Barnabas was a good man.
Barnabas, orang yang baik.
He was a good man. He was full of the Holy Ghost.
Dia penuhi Roh Kudus.
But he also was a man that just was outstanding in providing encouragement.
Dia adalah orang yang menyediakan dukungan, support, encouragement.
When people distrusted Paul and didn't want to allow him into the Christian circles, it was Barnabas who went to Paul and helped him.
Ketika orang-orang tidak percaya lagi kepada Paulus, Barnabaslah yang memberikan dukungan kepada Paulus.
When Paul didn't want to go on a missionary journey with John Mark, it was Barnabas who helped John Mark.
Ketika Paulus tidak mau melakukan perjalanan misionaris dengan Markus, maka Barnabaslah yang memberikan dukungan.
It was Barnabas who helped Silas go on the missionary journey.
Jadi Barnabaslah yang membuat Paulus boleh mencapai tujuan itu.
It was Barnabas who went to the churches in Antioch and other places and brought encouragement about the good things that are happening in other places. He would pass on the good news.
Jadi Barnabaslah yang pergi memberikan nasihat-nasihat, keterangan kepada gereja-gereja tentang apa yang sudah dilakukan Paulus di masa lalu dan akan yang ia lakukan.
Barnabas was a good man.
Barnabas orang baik.
Barnabas was what?
Barnabas.
What was he?
Barnabas itu
Say, Barnabas was a good man. Everyone say it together. Barnabas was a good man.
Jadi orang baik.
So we see these examples now.
Jadi kita lihat contoh itu.
Old Testament, New Testament.
Perjanjian Lama dan Baru.
Now, I will share with you my favorite passage on the passage that shows the principles of mentoring in the New Testament.
Nah, sekarang saya mau kasih contoh lagi prinsipal mentor dari Perjanjian.
And rightly so, it's the situation where one mentor is giving advice to his mentee or the mentoree.
Yang menunjukkan bagaimana seorang mentor memberikan nasihat kepada mentornya.
And if you remember one passage on mentoring that's really worth noting, in 2 Timothy 1, verses 1 through 8.
Kita bisa lihat dalam buku 2 Timotius 1 ayat 1 sampai 8.
And if you really want to just really get the principles, you really need to memorize this passage or to really pull it out and maybe do some deep Bible study or preaching on it.
Beliau anjurkan supaya kita boleh baca, pelajari, kalau bisa dihafal. Karena ini memberikan inspirasi kepada kita untuk menjadi mentor yang baik.
Paul is in prison and he gives great advice to young Timothy who's pastoring in Ephesus.
Paulus memberikan nasihat dan dukungan kepada orang muda Timotius untuk melayani.
Paul not only wants to do mentoring, but he also wants to do some succession planning.
Paulus bukan hanya memberikan nasihat, tetapi dia adalah tokoh pemimpin yang sukses dalam membuat rencana.
He knows that he won't be around for long, and so he wants to be sure that there's another leader or leaders in place to fill his slot. So he talks to Timothy and Titus and others.
Dia sadari bahwa dia tidak bisa pergi kemana-mana lagi, lalu dia cari dan mentor pergantinya orang muda Timotius untuk melanjutkan apa yang dia rencanakan.
Paul was a very wise man.
Paulus adalah orang yang bijaksana.
So let's just look at the principles he had in that passage rather quickly.
Jadi kita lihat pelajaran dari ayat ini ada 8 prinsip.
I won't read it, I'll just give you the paraphrase. It says Paul, and he's talking to Timothy, a beloved son.
Dalam buku 2 Timotius 1 ayat 1-8, Paulus mengatakan adalah Timotius adalah orang anak yang dia kasihi.
And he's thanking God for Timothy and for his ministry and for the progress he's made.
Dan dia ucapkan dalam ayat itu terima kasih kepada Tuhan oleh karena berkat yang dia berikan kepada Timotius.
But he also kind of challenges him here in the verse, and he says, I want to stir up the gift of God in you.
Dan dikatakan di ayat selanjutnya, dikatakan saya mengingatkan kepada engkau agar engkau boleh mendapatkan kasih karunia Tuhan.
And that's when he says, don't be ashamed of the testimony of our Lord.
Makanya Paulus katakan jangan malu melakukan tugas di hadapan Tuhan.
So he's giving great advice.
Jadi dia memberikan nasihat yang luar biasa kepada Timotius.
I think that clock is stuck on me.
Jamnya berhenti.
Yeah, if you're not careful, it might throw me off. So here's the principle one, first of all, he tells me.
Pelajaran pertama yang kita lihat untuk
The first
mentor.
principle we see from this passage is that Paul was a mentor to Timothy.
Di dalam ayat pertama kita lihat Paulus adalah model mentor bagi Timotius.
He sets a good example for us.
Dia katakan dia adalah contoh yang baik.
And number two, he encourages Timothy and he affirms him and he thanks God for Timothy.
Paulus sebagai mentor yang baik mendorong, memberikan semangat kepada Timothy yang mana dia menilai dan memastikan bahwasanya Timotius dipakai Tuhan dan terima kasih kepada Tuhan untuk
So we want to be positive and affirming to people who we're mentoring.
Dia mau pastikan agar melihat seseorang itu harus positif dari sudut pandang positif.
Paul prioritizes the relationship and he talks about how he spiritually prays and intercedes for Timothy.
Yang ketiga, Paulus memberikan dorongan kepada Timotius sehingga orang lain akan menghargai Timotius.
They had regular times to talk and get together and share, and that's how Paul transmitted his values to young Timothy.
Bagaimana Paulus mentransfer dia punya pandangan, nilai, baik firman Tuhan dan pengalaman, karena mereka memiliki waktu untuk berdiskusi.
But number 5, we see that Paul really had a genuine empathy and feeling for the struggles that Timothy was going through in Ephesus.
Yang kelima, Paulus memiliki empati yang murni kepada pergumulan yang dihadapi oleh Timotius.
He felt his joy and he felt the pain.
Dia ajarkan bagaimana bersuka cita dan juga menanggung penderitaan.
But I think this is a fascinating point. Number 6, as a mentor, Paul knew Timothy's background, founding factors.
Nah, keenam, Paulus sebagai mentor tahu latar belakang Timothy, baik keluarganya dan faktor yang membuat dia seperti itu.
He says, I know your genuine faith that is with you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice.
Jadi kita lihat dari kesaksian dalam 2 Timotius 1 ayat 1-8 betapa murninya iman yang ada di dalam Timotius.
As a mentor, you need to know something about the person you're mentoring.
Jadi sebagai mentor kita harus ketahui siapa yang kita mentor, seperti Paulus tahu si Timotius punya
Be interested in
latar
their
belakang.
background, their life, where they're born, their education, their struggles, their family.
Sebagai mentor yang baik, berusaha untuk tertarik kepada latar belakang yang akan kita mentor itu.
But you also see here that Paul, as a mentor, was spiritually positive, but he was also what I call carefronted or confronted.
Ya, Paulus tidak hanya positif menghadapi Timotius, tetapi dia juga memberikan arahan intensional kepada gaya kehidupan, memberikan nasihat dengan bahasa kasih kepada Timotius.
So Paul says, Timothy, I know your struggle. I feel your pain. I know the people in Ephesus are difficult to deal with, but you got to stir up the gift that's within you, and you got to rise up and don't let them overwhelm you.
Contoh dalam ayat itu, Paulus katakan, aku tahu pergumulanmu, aku tahu apa yang sedang kau hadapi, tapi aku mau engkau boleh maju terus dan tetaplah berjalan dengan kuasa Tuhan.
Amen.
Amen.
Sometimes we have to be kind of confronted with our mentors or mentees.
Jadi kadang-kadang kita harus memberikan semangat kepada siapa yang kita mentor itu.
Finally, we see as a mentor, Paul was very unambiguous. He was direct and clear, unambiguous.
Jadi yang berikut sebagai mentor, Paulus memberikan petunjuk arahan yang jelas, ya, tidak sama-sama kepada Timotius yang sedang dia mentor.
Paul was a very wise and clever person.
Paulus adalah orang bijaksana dan
He
pintar.
knew the value of mentoring, and that's why his ministry was expanded.
Dia tahu nilai daripada mementor orang itu.
I'm closing shortly, and I will show you this principle in a moment.
Dan sebelum saya tutup, saya mau memberikan satu pelajaran.
I think one person who really symbolized this whole concept in our day and time is really Nelson Mandela.
Nah, saya pikir dari apa yang semua kita bicarakan tentang mentor, orang yang bisa kita lihat adalah
There is a South African word which means Ubuntu.
Ada nama pemimpin dia di Afrika, Ubuntu.
And basically, it is a word that was popularized by D.Min, but Mandela used it often in his Truth and Reconciliation when he bring the whites and the blacks together in South Africa.
Ya, ini adalah prinsip kepemimpinan bagaimana Nelson Mandela mendamaikan Afrika hitam dan Afrika putih.
And this word Ubuntu means humanity, and at the heart of this emerges the idea that an individual learns to be a person through other people.
Ubuntu, kalimat Ubuntu artinya adalah humanity, kemanusiaan yang ada di hati, yang bergabung menjadi sebuah ide, dan itu masuk ke dalam konsep individu. Bagaimana kita pelajari untuk menjadi manusia melalui orang lain.
The first marathon I ever ran, I didn't do a lot of practice before I ran it.
Pertama kali waktu saya berlari dalam maraton yang belum saya praktekkan waktu itu.
But when I got past halfway in the marathon, I was about ready to collapse.
Karena waktu itu belum sampai separuh daripada tujuan, saya sudah mau kolaps.
I was in so much pain and I was burning literally.
Terlalu sakit dan hampir pingsan.
And I remember mile 16 or mile 17, I was about ready to throw in the towel.
Oh ya,
As I was staggering, stumbling along.
Ketika waktu itu saya benar-benar sedang kesusahan,
I'm
sulitan.
running by, and this older white gentleman by the name of Sandy comes up and he's running with me.
Waktu itu saya sudah mau menyerah, tapi ada orang yang datang mengambil saya.
And he begins to talk to me.
Dan dia berbicara kepada saya.
He begins to encourage me.
Dan dia memberikan semangat kepada saya.
And he says to me, he says, "How have you run this marathon without practice?" He said, "You're doing a good job."
Dia katakan sesuatu yang sebenarnya saya belum praktek, tapi orang ini katakan, kau sudah buat yang baik.
And the more he encouraged me, the more I found energy.
Semakin bagus dia punya dukungan, itu memberikan tenaga bagi
I
saya.
felt like I could go on. He gave me positive things to think about.
Saya pikir saya bisa lanjutkan ini karena dia ini memberikan
He was
dukungan.
running alongside of me.
Jadi dia lari bersama saya di
As
sisi
we got to
saya.
about 19 and 21 and 23,
Dan ketika saya mencapai miles ke 19,
24 and 25,
24, 25 miles.
and finally we saw the finish line.
Dan di depan saya lihat ada tanda sudah
And then
gas akhir.
something special takes place at that point.
Ada hal yang istimewa waktu
It's like the adrenaline takes over.
saya harus selesaikan ini.
You move into that zone,
Dan majulah terus kepada arah
and
yang betul.
momentarily your pain evaporates, and you've got new energy to move forward.
Jadi ketika itu rasa lelah terlupakan oleh karena tenaga baru yang
And I turned to
menolong.
my friend Sandy, and I said, "Sandy, you've really helped me.
Jadi saya katakan kepada teman saya, Sandy, engkau betul-betul menolong saya.
You must cross the finish line first because you were the one that made the difference."
Saya katakan kau juga yang harus ikut masuk ke tempat garis lain itu, karena kau juga yang membuat
And
perubahan.
I'll never forget what he said.
Dan saya tidak pernah lupa apa yang dia bilang.
He turned to me and he kind of paused.
Dan dia berpaling kepada saya dan sebetulnya.
He says, "No, Delbert, you crossed the finish
Saya
line.
kata tidak, kau
You crossed the finish line."
kau yang selesaikan itu.
So I said, "No, but you've helped me."
Dia bilang tidak, kau harus tolong saya.
But then he said, "You helped me too."
Lalu dia katakan, kau juga
He
tolong
said, "When
saya.
I met you at mile 17, I was about ready to quit and give up.
Karena dia bilang waktu kau di miles ke-17, saya sudah mau menyerah.
And by helping you, I helped myself.
Dengan menolong kamu, saya juga menolong diri saya.
I'm finishing because I help you."
Saya bisa selesaikan oleh karena pertolongan menolong kamu.
Ubuntu.
Itulah
By helping others, we realize our own purpose.
menolong orang lain yang membuat kita juga
We
mencapai tujuan.
fulfill by teaching, we learn.
Kita dipenuhi oleh karena mengajarkan orang
By
lain.
giving, we receive.
dengan apa yang kita pelajari, dengan apa yang kita terima.
Yesterday, I talked with Dr. Bartholomeus.
Kemarin saya berbicara kepada Dr. Bartholomeus Nenggolan.
And I was asking you about his program that he's the Vice President for Student Services.
Dia adalah PR3.
And I was asking about students, and we got a good conversation about helping students.
Dan kami diskusikan tentang bagaimana menolong mahasiswa.
And he told me that he's got 3 students living in his home that he's paying for their tuition and helping them get through school.
Dan dia ceritakan bahwasanya di rumahnya ada 3 mahasiswa yang bermasalah dalam biaya sekolah, tapi kita tolong di rumah.
And I told him, I said, that's beautiful.
Dan saya katakan kepada Dr. Nenggolan,
I said, I want to help one of your students too.
Saya juga mau menolong mahasiswa.
And we both agreed that you can't go wrong by helping people.
Dan kami berdua sepakat, gak ada salahnya dengan
by pouring into their lives.
Untuk boleh mencapai garis.
Blessings will come back to you.
Berkat itu akan datang kepada kita.
I know my friend won't mind me referring to Dr. Gibson.
Saya tahu bahwa teman saya tentang Dr. Gibson.
Dr. Gibson is helping one of his children, and he's got literally 5 young people in his home, and he's helping to raise them.
Beliau membantu 5 anak di rumahnya untuk dibesarkan.
I was so touched with that.
Saya sangat terjamah.
I was so moved that somebody's willing to give up their time and their energy to help someone else.
Saya terdorong, termotivasi untuk mau menolong, memberikan waktu menolong orang lain.
By giving, you receive.
Dengan memberi, kau akan menerima.
Amen.
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 Go back and help someone.
Ayo, kembalilah ke rumah dan tolong orang lain.
I'm wrapping this up here.
Bantu orang lain.
How can you be a mentoring?
Bagaimana Anda bisa
mentor, I should say. Well, by deliberately deciding that you want to mentor someone.
Jadi dengan menolong orang untuk mengambil keputusan,
or letting someone be a mentor to you.
Atau izinkan orang lain jadi mentor Anda.
But the word I want to leave with you is got to be very intentional.
Kalimat yang ingin saya tinggalkan adalah disengaja, intention.
Very directive.
Itu adalah sangat memberikan arahan.
It won't happen by accident.
Tidak terjadi secara accident.
And you can very easily get a mentoring network. It's very simple. I kind of have some phrases here that you can refer to very easily. A kind of a reaching forward mentoring is when you turn to somebody who's senior to you and you ask them to give you advice.
Forward adalah meminta nasihat dari orang yang lebih senior kepada kita untuk memberikan nasihat. By reaching around,
you're dealing with people who are in the same level as you are. They're your friends. You're getting advice from them, but they're giving advice to you as well.
Dengan menjaga orang-orang seumur Anda, kemudian Anda mementor dia juga mementor Anda.
Or by reaching back, that's like a junior mentor. You're helping somebody who's behind you.
Ada juga dengan mementor orang muda yang akan menolong Anda dari samping.
So everybody should have a mentoring circle or a network. You've got somebody who you're reaching to get help from, who you're helping across, they're giving you feedback, and you're reaching back to pull somebody behind you.
Jadi ada 3 konsep mentor yang bisa kita lakukan, forward, network, dan back.
And this is what Paul did.
Ini yang dilakukan oleh si Paulus.
In his writings, he talked about how Gamaliel and Ellen White says that Paul was definitely affected by Stephen, and he also learned from Peter. These are people who were kind of like helped him in areas that he needed help in.
Contoh yang tadi yang disebutkan forward, bagaimana Paulus berhubungan dengan Gamaliel, Stephen, dan Petrus.
Paul's peer mentors were people like Barnabas and Silas and James, the brother of Jesus, the half-brother of Jesus, who he talked to when he wanted counsel.
Paulus melakukan model konsep mentor kalau forward untuk senior, sementara around untuk peer, Barnabas, Silas, dan James. Itulah contoh yang dilakukan.
The ones he reached back to were like Timothy and Titus and Onesimus.
Sementara contoh untuk konsep program mentor adalah
that's what Paul did. What about me? What about you?
Itu konsep tentang saya. Dan bagaimana dengan Anda?
As I pull this together, I'm challenging you to deliberately fill these spaces in.
Seperti Paulus memberikan tantangan dari saya kepada Anda.
Reaching forward, get somebody like Paul. Reaching across, get somebody like Barnabas. Or reaching back, somebody like Timothy.
Mencapai seperti Paulus, seperti Barnabas, seperti Timotius, dan seperti saya.
Everyone should have those boxes filled.
Jadi orang-orang harus memenuhi box-box yang tadi.
And so when you're doing mentoring, just keep some basic things in mind. Decide you want to be a mentor. Pray about it. Approach a potential person or respond to somebody who's asking you. Arrange to meet them regularly, and of course begin to officially or unofficially work with them.
5 langkah untuk menemukan mentor. Pertama, putuskan. apakah Anda mau menjadi mentor. Kemudian kedua, doakan, lihatlah saya menjadi mentor yang potensial. Kemudian ketiga, approach, ya, siapa mentor yang potensial. Kemudian 4, aturlah waktu kapan bertemu secara regular, rutin. Dan 5, mulai.
Probably this. Some people always ask, they say, well, what do I do in the mentoring relationship? It's very simple.
Jadi untuk mementor itu sangat sederhana.
You basically have a simple model like this. You figure out where's the person, where are they right now? The current state.
Secara sederhana, gambaran untuk mentor ada seperti ini, from current state, dari mulai awalnya di.
You figure out where they want to be.
Kemudian kita coba cari tahu apa yang Anda akan mau.
And then you simply figure out a plan to get there.
Jadi seperti inilah rencananya, tujuan yang mau
So
dicapai.
it doesn't have to be complicated or involved. It's a very simple thing. Where they are, where they're going, and how to get there.
Apa yang mau beliau gambarkan adalah mementor itu tidak begitu susah, tidak sulit.
And when you're meeting with them, ask questions. Listen. Know how to use silence. Don't do all the talking, and challenge them to reach higher.
Dan dalam pertemuan mentor itu, mulailah dengan pertanyaan-pertanyaan, ya. Bertanya, kemudian dengar, kemudian ada waktu untuk berpikir, dan yang berikut adakan tantangan.
Is that good?
Bagus kan langkah-langkahnya? Jadi dari apa yang dipelajari hari ini adalah beliau sama-sama. Semakin banyak kita berikan kepada orang lain, semakin banyak yang bisa hasil kita dapatkan. Tidak hanya program pekerjaan dapat, tapi kita juga mendapat teman yang mendukung kita.
Amen? Amen. That's good. That's what you think, Mitch.
We are blessed by sharing.
Kita diberkati dengan membahagikan. Dengan menolong orang lain, kita pun tertolong.
So whichever way you do that, it can work. I mean, anyone, it doesn't have to be anything very involved. I need another volunteer. What does mentoring mean to you? Somebody give me a reaction. My time is almost up. Who's next?
Apa menurut Anda mentor yang sudah kita pelajari pagi ini?
So when we help others, it's mean I am not perfect. Yes.
Dengan menolong orang lain, artinya saya tidak sempurna juga.
Let's do it.
Mari kita lakukan pelajaran ini.
So I think the point is clear. I think the point is very clear that we can do something about it. What's wrong with it? Well, as we wrap this up, the point simply is that we have the opportunity of touching the lives, and I think it was stated well. I want to end by referring to the book of Philemon.
Di akhir saya mau ambil
Philemon, that little small book of 25 verses in the Bible. Andrews University is doing a commentary, and I was asked to write on the book of Philemon, and I spent hundreds of hours studying into that little small book.
Saya sudah baca di buku Philemon dan pelajari tentang buku Philemon.
And in that book, as you know, Paul has this wonderful encounter with the runaway slave Onesimus.
Dalam buku itu diceritakan bagaimana Paulus berhubungan dengan budak yang lari namanya Onesimus.
Philemon is the owner of Onesimus, a slave in the city of Colossae. And Onesimus runs away from Philemon and apparently steals some of his belongings and goes to Rome.
Ini Philemon, budaknya adalah Onesimus yang mana dia lari oleh karena mencuri, ya.
And when in Rome, he comes into contact with the Apostle Paul.
Dan ketika dia melakukan hal yang salah, dia berhubungan dengan Paulus.
And Ellen White gives us the details of this in Acts of the Apostles. She talks about this encounter that this slave has with the Apostle Paul.
Jadi ada permasalahan yang dihadapi oleh budak ini, dia utarakan kepada Paulus.
He's dramatically changed and converted.
Dan akhirnya mengubah dia dan bertobat.
Paul mentors him.
Paulus mementor Onesimus.
Ellen White says that Paul saw in Onesimus qualities that were worthy of ministry.
Paulus, Nyonya katakan Paulus melihat kualitas daripada Onesimus kalau
He
dia
saw more than a slave, he saw a potential minister of the gospel.
Paulus melihat Onesimus ada kualitas untuk boleh melanjutkan penginjilan.
And he counseled with him, and he saw that Onesimus went back to Colossae and made it right with Philemon.
Dan dia nasihatkan Onesimus untuk kembali ke Galati untuk bertemu dengan Philemon.
Paul was kind and wise, he was.
Pada waktu itu Paulus adalah orang yang baik dan bijaksana.
He sent a letter back with him and was making the case on how Philemon should forgive and accept Onesimus back.
Paulus menulis surat di bawah Onesimus dan memberikan nasihat kepada Philemon supaya menerima kembali ini.
And in this short but powerful letter, Paul makes the case on why Onesimus should be freed and forgiven by Philemon.
Melalui surat Paulus ini diterangkan bagaimana Filemon harus mengizinkan, memaafkan, membebaskan Onesimus.
I had a slide to show you, but it's okay. But in that book, we have 10 people who Paul refers to.
Tapi dalam buku itu ada 10 orang yang terlibat dalam peristiwa itu.
And everyone Paul mentored.
Dan semuanya dimentor sama si Paulus.
He talked to Philemon himself and Apphia, Philemon's wife, and Archippus, his son.
Dan dia berbicara kepada Filemon, kepada istri dan anaknya.
He talked to the church there, Colossae, how they needed to hear about the situation and know about it.
Dan dia juga berbicara kepada jemaat di Galatia bagaimana Onesimus ini.
But also he had a team of 5 brothers who were there with him in Rome, and he was mentoring even them.
Dan juga dengan tim 5 orang yang di Roma yang dimentor oleh Paulus.
There was Timothy, there was Epaphroditus.
Dan itulah Timotius dan
There was John Mark, there was Demas.
ada John Mark, ada Dimas.
And all of these people, they were watching Paul do this wonderful act of mentoring and promoting forgiveness for Onesimus.
Semua ini dilakukan Paulus supaya Filemon memaafkan Onesimus.
And guess what?
Dan coba tebak apa yang
His
terjadi.
mentoring worked.
Apa yang dimentor oleh Paulus berhasil.
Philemon did accept Onesimus back.
Filemon menerima kembalinya Onesimus.
Tradition says he gave him his freedom.
Dan secara tradisi katakan dia diberikan kebebasan.
But not only did he give him his freedom, but he also gave him even more than that. He gave him a platform to do ministry on.
Bukan hanya kebebasan, tetapi juga satu hak atau untuk melayani.
And tradition tells us that Onesimus became a bishop.
Dan
In the early
katakan
church.
di dalam kekristenan mula-mula Filemon, Onesimus menjadi bishop
and had a fruitful ministry,
dan mendapatkan buah dari pelayanannya
and ultimately was martyred for Christ.
dan akhirnya mati martir untuk Kristus.
Mentoring works.
Pekerjaan mentor daripada Paulus.
My sisters and brothers, I leave this with you.
Saudara dan saudari, saya tinggalkan ini kepada Anda.
Let us be a friend.
Marilah kita bisa menjadi seorang
Let us be a
sahabat.
mentor,
Jadilah seorang mentor
even as Jesus was.
seperti yang Yesus sudah lakukan.
Amen.
Amin.